Thank you for auditing Professor Sky's Record Review, the always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who was going to hang 2 pounds of raw meat behind me on the wall, but my wife said it was a bad idea. I was going to do so because I'm reviewing the new album by Benny the Butcher, Plugs I've Met 2. Little caveat, I've never listened to Plugs I've Met 1. The first Griselda project that I listened to was in fact their debut album, their debut LP, but I've been reviewing everything ever since. Every time one of their projects comes out, I get excited and nervous. Excited because they are never whack, and I'm nervous because eventually they're going to release something that is whack. Is this something that is whack? No, it's not. It's another great EP, very solid and excellent. It would be easy to criticize it. It would be easy to say it's whack, only because we are, as Griselda fans, a bunch of spoiled little babies. The amount of quality that they put out so consistently, it's understandable that we might want to punish Benny the Butcher for the greatness of his previous LP, which came out like 2 months ago. Okay? Burden of Proof is a masterpiece and so much more in depth and so much richer, and Hit Boy's production is probably more interesting, although probably same quality, but maybe more worthy of analysis than Harry Fraud's production here on this album. You know, like, you're tempted to just say, like, well, it's not as good as the last one. But that's not what Griselda's about. Griselda's about just releasing and releasing and releasing and releasing. Every month, at least one, sometimes 2, sometimes 3 albums from their group. I think it's actually based on a little bit the drug model. So much of their music is about selling drugs, and so much about selling drugs is having product and moving through product, and that's the way that they do it. But we are spoiled. Could you imagine if Jay-Z released 3 EPs in between, Volume 2 and Volume 3? Like, how good would those have been? Sure, they wouldn't have been as good as Volume 3, but they would have been better than the nothing that we got. I will say that this album does make me understand that Benny the Butcher does best with Griselda, in my opinion at least. He's a little bit too down the center, and I like the spice that the other twos add. Also, I just don't like his choruses. I'll get into that, but his choruses are just a little bit too much just saying one thing over and over again that aren't that interesting. When it comes to Griselda and Benny the Butcher, I often ask questions of authenticity, and people always come to their defense, as though in my opinion, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to me if Benny the Butcher really did sell drugs and really was slanging cane and meeting plugs, or if he was just a kid from Buffalo who saw this life and decided to describe it and took on a persona. I think that what's important is that we understand it as this artwork that reflects our time and reflects our age. Crack dealing is the great example of American capitalism taken to its extreme. That's why it's so interesting. It shows the American dream, but one thing that I like about this album and all of Benny the Butcher's stuff is that it actually shows the dark side of the dream more than the dream itself. This album is totally haunted by people who were thrown in jail, by people who were killed being in this game. The game itself is no different fundamentally than the capitalist game that we are all locked in, trying to get more and more capital, trying to get over by putting other people down, and trying to be rich enough to be comfortable, right? So I like that about this, that whether or not he is who he says he is, and feel free to leave it in the comments, but again, I'm emphasizing the fact that it doesn't matter. I find it an interesting way that he presents it. As I said in the previous video about him, which I'll put a link up to it there, he's in some ways the most psychologically honest crack rapper. When we get to the question of authenticity, I think about the title and the cover. So the idea of a plug, and my dad watches this show, and he's probably not down with all the crack slang, so I'll explain it for him and anyone else who doesn't know. You know, a plug is somebody who receives the cocaine or the drugs from overseas, right? Like they're the person who deals with the importing and has the massive quantity of coke or heroin or whatever, and then they sell it to sort of the top level dealers who then divide it up to the lower dealers, right? So there's been an escalation over the years of rappers who keep sort of talking about what they do, from being on the corner to eventually reaching up to here, right? And it's this weird, again, reflection of the glorification of middle management. Because what is a plug if not middle management, right? Someone who takes the product, raises the price, and then gives it to the distributors, right? And in this idea of talking about plugs and then having on the cover Tony Montana and Sosa from Scarface, it makes me even wonder more about the relationship between authenticity and fakeness. Because, like, Scarface is the most played out movie in all hip hop. It's the most commonly quoted movie. It's like the thing that everybody says and uses when they want to talk about really being a coke dealer. I'm like Tony Montana. But, like, there's this line from the opening song. He says, "This is nostalgic. It feels like when Tony met Sosa. I ain't make any of this up." Something like that. Tony never met Sosa. There is no Tony. There is no Sosa. There are just characters. So it's weird, like, talking about nostalgic for something that didn't happen, while also constantly talking about how real he is. Fundamentally, though, what I appreciate is that I don't think you would make such a tired analogy if you couldn't actually back it up by being the real deal. You know what I mean? Like, it's such a Buster move that it's almost an anti-Buster move to quote Scarface and have it be so on the nose. In a similar way, he got shot like a couple months ago in Texas. Like, it was terrible, like he might die. And he only mentions it once at the very end of the album. So, you know, most rappers who get shot use it to their advantage and say, this is proof of what a gangster I am. He doesn't seem to do that, and it's probably because he doesn't need to do it. So I don't know. It's interesting, and we're going to get into it later, too, about this question of authenticity. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take that first track. I'll put a link to that up here as well, if you want to listen to it. This is the homework, if you want to hear what the album sounds like. The track is called When Tony Met Sosa. Again, musically, Harry Fraud, not Harry Styles. I want to say Harry Styles, but that's not who he is. Still, have you ever seen them in the same room together? I don't know what he looks like, even. Harry Fraud, the production on here is all the way throughout, superb. Excellent. As any one track on this album might be the best track on most other albums. But again, we're so spoiled by Griselda that it just comes across as like another good Griselda album. On this track, we have a real strong saxophone solo as a sample. What he does that's good is he has one lead instrument on each song that helps you differentiate song to song. He usually has the songs in two different parts, so there's some amount of development. And it's all just really solid in creating this nice kind of 70s-ish atmosphere. And just the quality is so high. Lyrically, the quality is so high as well. It starts off with him talking about people needing less trappers and more poets. And I think he's making a good case on this album, as he did with his previous one, as he does on every verse, that he deserves to be amongst the pantheon of trappers and poets, right? People who actually did it, right? So, you know, Notorious B.I.G., Jay-Z, Pusha T. I think Benny the Butcher belongs up there with the way he's able to describe the game with honesty and with poetry and beauty, right? I'd actually probably even put him ahead of Pusha T in terms of his lyricism, although not in terms of his delivery, you know. But the actual like lyric to lyric, I'd say that. But this isn't a channel about rap battles, so if you disagree with me, feel free. If you agree with me, feel free to. It doesn't matter. Lots of great lyrics on here. He's talking constantly about how rap saved him. Again, this is, much like Scarface, is a movie against dealing drugs that people watch and they just don't watch the last 5 minutes, right? This is an album very much against dealing drugs because rap had to save him, as he said it, right? He was saved by rap. He was saved from this game. And he constantly goes back to this theme of remorse and fear and the guilt that he has as a survivor. Sorry, I got a little bit lost there. Gotta have a little coffee. My favorite lyric on this album, can only name a few rhymers who had it like dude got it. Make a list, huh? And I'm on their heels like shoe polish. Just referring to himself as dude got it. It's just a really cool way of saying it. Only a few rhymers had it like dude got it. Referring to himself in the third person as dude. And just dude got it, shoe polish, really nice, like the resonance between those rhymes is really rich. Sadly, that develops later into a very anti-Semitic line about a Jew wallet. It's my hope that the casual and often aggressive anti-Semitism that has marred hip-hop will go away. There used to be a lot more homophobia, you know, and like overt gay bashing in hip-hop. That has seen a decline. There used to be a lot of real transphobia in hip-hop. That has also seen a decline. So hopefully this little bastion of very regrettable anti-Semitism will make its way out of French hip hop. I mean, out of American hip hop. It's a little bit in French hip hop too. It's on my head, but hey, who knows? It just bums me out every time I hear it. He talks about how his album is for people in offices and people in jail cells, and that's true. You know, like he's able to make this music and it's able to be appreciated by all. Next track is called Overall. This is my favorite beat on the album. Just awesome. Harry Fraud, again, like how do you follow up Hit Boy and do this well? Like it must be both exhilarating and frustrating as hell to be in the Griselda stable of producers. Cause you know, it's like, what, crap, they got who? Okay, all right, I have to up my game. Like everyone has to just keep on upping their game. There's cool synthesizers and horns. Just so good, so consistent. This has a guest appearance by someone named Chinx, Chinx. And it's great because it's this whole 70s soundtrack and he's talking about like, we win overall, you know? We win. Chinx has been dead for 5 years. He was shot in Jamaica, Queens, dead, presumably from this life that he's describing. So a good reinforcement of the sort of sadness. And again, there's this really good argument to be made that, you know, that crack music is a reflection of American capitalism because crack is a great consumer product and the hierarchy and the extreme dog-eat-dog nature of it, and you know, it's a great metaphor for capitalism. And anything that goes against crack rap, I think, could also be seen, or against selling crack, can be seen as a criticism of the inhumanness of capitalism itself. It's kind of a way of thinking about it, right? And that art represents a way out of that in both senses. Plug Talk is the next track. Has the most boring chorus ever. This is my least favorite moment on any Griselda product ever. Got famous off of drug talk. Got that famous off of plug talk. Got famous off of drug talk. Got famous off of something like that. It's okay. I mean, it's okay. It's just, can we just do something else for the choruses? It's cool because there's like a Japanese sample in here, like a Japanese like weird soft rock sample. And then both rappers who are on here, 2 Chainz and Benny, talk about language. Like Benny says, $250,000 for a tour overseas. I might have to learn another language. 2 Chainz starts off this whole thing with the words bilingual. But it's nice. Another great song that the sample gets kind of pitched up and messed around. And Benny talks a lot about, you know, being rich, fairly standard. 2 Chainz uses a line, glide on him like Drexler. I can't tell if that's a cheesy line or not. I was going to put a poll in my community, but you tell me, is that a good line or not? Glide on him like Drexler. I don't know. I'm just a little bit tired of the amount of 80s basketball players I have to think about to understand modern rap music. Next track, Live By It. Another weak chorus, you know, gotta live by it, die by it. But this is a very nice production here, almost like an X-Files whistle theme here. And the beat, if you listen carefully, it gets fatter over time. Lots of great, sad little notes put in here. You know, most people won't outlive their grandparents. Kind of a sad thing here. As well as a small complaint about being famous and black, I think. Guns in the tour buses always belong to the rapper. I think that's an interesting idea, that how unfair it is that rappers always get blamed for whatever their crew does. Or maybe it's fair, I don't know. He even talks briefly about being a thief. And again, it's the way that he talks about crime that makes him seem so authentic, I think. Like, the way he throws this in, it's like not the whole point of the whole song. He talks about a robbery that he did and another one. And just the way that he says it, he would, I mean, but that's the other thing. This guy's such a good lyricist and such a good creator that we'll never know. I'll never know. You might know. I'll never know. Talking Back is with Fat Joe. Speaking of the heyday of the 90s. Beautiful sample, like a voice sample on here. Again, talks about still being in chains and still being a slave. And again, very subtle. Just pay attention, okay? In hip-hop music, even the most capitalist-driven music, like Griselda arguably is, there's some just consistent references to the way that the system is playing people, especially people who come from lower socioeconomic origins. These like being played, still being a slave. Just pay attention. It's on the rise because people are waking up to the reality, right? Fat Joe's verse, I read somewhere people making fun of it. Fat Joe, he's always goofy. He's always good. I like him. I don't know. He says moving keys like a janitor. I think that's one of the best crack dealing references I've ever heard. Because like, janitors always have all those keys, you know what I mean? And like, he thought to make a verse out of that. So I don't know. This is one vote for the Fat Joe verse. No instructions is really nice here. He says that he's the person who invented his flow. And I was thinking about it, and my comment section is always really smart. Who could actually claim to have invented his flow? Because I think he might be right, but I can't think of someone else who might be stealing it, or he might be stealing from. Cool kind of flutes on here, and here he talks a lot about his own weaknesses, his own flaws, about how you shouldn't look up to him, and how you shouldn't look up to crack rappers. Like, he's really very clearly saying, like, you shouldn't do it. Here's a lyric. Oh, y'all believe these rappers if you want. Let them convince you to do what they've never done. They're just trying to sell records. It's all a front. So again, this idea that really people shouldn't listen to rappers and do what they did, whether or not they did it or not. Ties into the next track, Longevity, featuring French Montana and Jim Jones, which is really about just the luck that goes into not having been killed by the game or being in jail, right? Talking about balling for the summer and then in the next summer being locked up. Really a very bleak view of being a criminal on this album. Almost Crime Never Pays. Cool guitar sample, a little bit pitched up. I like French Montana's verse. I really should probably pay attention more to French Montana. I've never really listened to any of his projects too carefully. I think I listened to one song and didn't like it. But if he's from Morocco, that's pretty cool. I have a really good friend from Morocco. The second verse is his, and he talks about, drug dealers tell the truth and preachers lie. I like this idea, which often comes out in rap music, that part of the reason why drug dealers are so appealing is that the other role models are so flawed. So why not try to be like the bad guy? Third verse is Jim Jones. It's all right. All the guest appearances on this are like okay. They're not great, but they're okay. He does tell you what to do if you drop your iPhone in water. Is this a metaphor? I don't know. Survivor's Remorse, featuring Rick Hyde, is exactly what it says, survivor's remorse. And, when you say survivor's remorse or survivor's guilt, that's tied into trauma. And he's not the only person to draw parallels between selling crack and being in the ghetto and having to survive a trauma experience. But I think he does it as well as anybody else. And this idea of survivor's remorse, that he could be in jail, that's why he answers every call from anyone who calls him. It's all just building on the theme that was in Burden of Proof. Nice haunting piano line, nice little details like being a kid and getting milk for his mom. He even defers to Pusha T being a better dope dealer than him. I've never ever heard a rap artist, a crack rap artist say that someone else was better at selling crack than he was. So that's kind of interesting. Cool kind of vocal whines in the back. Just this whole theme about it could have been him who's dead. It could have been him who was in Clinton, right? The correctional facility, which I drive by sometimes when I'm dropping my kids off at scouting events. So there you go. The guest verse is somewhat mediocre, but I do like the line, if you made it out of your 20s, you're blessed. I think that's true for everybody, whether or not you're a criminal. If you've made it out of your 20s, congratulations. It's really hard to make it out of your 20s. You just have so many emotions, and life can be so bleak. But things get better. People don't say that because people love being young. It is so much better being in your 40s than it was being in my 20s. God, it's just so much nicer. Anyways, the final track is Thanksgiving, kind of string-led here, and just going on and on about how you should thank him for what he's doing. And how, what I like here is he says that someone tells him he gives too much credit to the plugs. And I think this goes back to this kind of capitalist theme, right? It's true. Why would you give credit to the plugs? They're not the ones getting arrested. They're not the ones who are on the street getting shot at over turf, right? I think that's an interesting idea. Like, why are you praising middle management, right? Why are we praising, I don't know, why are we praising Elon Musk instead of my buddy Aaron who's dealing Teslas in Buffalo, right? That's actually true. I wonder if I should have said his name. It doesn't matter, right? Like, why are we like celebrating the people who are actually doing the work versus the people who are taking all the credit? I don't know. And then this is the song that includes the verse about him getting shot. And it's just the way it's thrown out is so interesting. In therapy, learning to walk again, 4 of them in a Rari. They shot me. I'm back cocky in the jewelry that I bought again. They want me to post when I slide. They say I'm gangster. Trust me, it won't make Instagram. It's gonna make the papers. So just a threat that he's gonna kill the people who shot him, but it won't be for the internet, it'll be for the papers. He talks about that previously. Only real gangsters are only real when they're in the papers. I don't know, but just here we go. Like this event, which could have been the theme of the whole album, especially somebody who's so reflective, who talks so much about the consequences of the game, just throws it in here at the end. A bizarre choice, but I think a welcome one because the rest of the album is so strong. So there you go. There's my review of The Plugs I Met 2. If you are a bigger Griselda fan than I am, oh my God, I need to tell this story. So I'm a middle class white guy living in the suburbs, and I ordered pizza, and the guy who came to the door was wearing a Conway sweatshirt, the pizza delivery guy, and I was actually still wearing my suit from teaching. and he like delivers the pizza, and I was like, "Hey, is that a Conway sweatshirt?" And the guy looked at me like, "What? Is that a Conway sweatshirt?" And he's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Nice." He was pretty surprised. It was kind of funny. I don't know why I told that story. I just felt like it. Okay. Well, I've been keeping my family from eating lunch, so I'm gonna go get my meat cleaver and chop up some of the meat I was gonna hang on the wall. And until next time, there's the camera. Oh, let me show you Bo. He's been very quiet this whole meeting. Bo, you wanna say hi? You wanna say hi to the auditors, Bobo? Huh? Did you meet any plugs, Bobo? Toby, are you a plug? Are you a plug, Toby? Huh? Are you gonna move weight, Toby? Yeah. All right, there's the camera.